What up, what up, what up, what up? What's going on? Welcome to my video. This is video 14 where, I share my story about my journey to Christ. Uh, and this one, I'll be talking about my divorce. Divorce is a huge thing, for some folks don't care, but divorce is a huge thing. It took me a while to make this video. This was back in 2014. But it took me a while to make this video because it was a lot to process in the midst of it all. And I just wanted to, make sure I deliver it right. And, also just, thinking back on it, Like I said, it's a process that you go through that, a lot of people don't understand. And, sometimes you move on from it. And then, sometimes you look back and you think about it. And it just brings you back to that time where you went through it or whatever. So, this is a huge turning point that I'm going to talk about or whatever. And yeah, I just go ahead and get into it. So, my previous video, I was talking about 2012. I decided to change my life and, try to live Christ-like, And one of the things that I did, I was, staying with, my girlfriend or my baby mom, however you want to say it at the time. And, I decided, man, instead of this, shacking up and stuff like that, maybe I need to go ahead and get married to her and that'll make things, better or whatever. And I think I did share that, it didn't get better. And as time progressed, it still was getting bad, 2012, 2013, all the way up to 2014. Like, it was bad. Then nothing changed. And, I'm not going to give all the details about what was going on because I'm not going to sit here and just, share, personal stuff like that, which got to do with me and my, my ex-wife. But like I said, to just make a long story short, it got bad. In 2014, I could see it coming. My wife asked for a divorce. And I wasn't shocked because, like I said, I seen it coming. It didn't change. So, what, what you gonna expect? But this time there was like a calmness that I had, a calmness that I had that, when she said it, even though I was mad about the situation because I really did want it to work, I wasn't, frustrated. I was at peace. And there was a voice that was, in my head that said, let it go. And just as I was with Ishmael, I will also be with your children. And when I heard that, I was like, one, like it didn't resonate with me as far as like, it didn't feel like my voice was saying that because I wasn't like thinking about putting my children in the same situation as the whole Abraham and Ishmael or Hagar and Ishmael. So I was like just thinking like, where that came from, And then I thought about the story. Then I thought about, Hagar and Ishmael and then the divorce. And I was like, man, one, I didn't relate Abraham and Hagar as a divorce because they wasn't, I didn't see them as married. So I was like, nah, like that can't be, this can't be real. I was like, Abraham wasn't married to Hagar, you know? And then that voice was like, go look. So I went into Genesis chapter 16 and I looked and it said that Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to be his wife. And I was like, dang, I never paid attention to that, I never paid attention to the fact that, Hagar was considered his wife. And I never heard it in that way. And I never, when you think about it, it was like, this is God actually initiating that divorce, which, you never hear that either. All you hear is, God hate divorce. So, I was like, wow, this is something that blew my mind that I never thought about. And then the second thing was when it came to my kids, because it was addressing something that was real, the real issue. Because the reason why, and I knew the story, and I knew that the reason why God said that to Abraham is because he was grievous about putting away his child. He didn't want to send his child off. And it was the same way with me. It was like it was really addressing my real eternal issue, and that was, my kids. A lot of times we get into relationships and we move fast, we have children with people, and then things kind of like get like blurry. And I feel like what it was really addressing to the heart of me is that I really didn't love my wife. Like, it wasn't one of those things where it was like, man, I was upset because she's divorcing me. It was just the reason why I was in this relationship for so long is because of my kids, and I was afraid to let them go because I didn't grow up thinking that, or wanting to be in a situation like this. I grew up in a single parent home. So, I would be dang if I, put my children in that same situation. And, I always had that in the back of my mind. I'd never be like, my father, or I never put my kids in that situation. And I mean, I was serious about marriage. I was more committed to marriage than anything, so it was like, to death do us part. I was committed to the marriage, a part of it. But the core issue was that, also that, I didn't love her, that me and her, like, we wasn't on the same page. And I was forcing it, all because of my kids. And, that's kind of like one of the core issues when it comes to relationships is you shouldn't, why we shouldn't have those, sets and stuff like that in the beginning, because you end up getting someone pregnant, you have kids. If y'all not on the same page, you gonna mess around and start, manipulating the situation, thinking that y'all supposed to be together when you really don't supposed to be with each other, And that was the same way, with, Abraham and Hagar. It was like they wasn't really supposed to be with each other. It was manipulated. Sarah gave Abraham they lack of faith, and she didn't think she was gonna have any children, so she thought that, well, Hagar can have the children when God didn't set it up that way, and God just really worked with me about understanding the power of letting go. A lot of times, we be stuck in situations that, it's hard for us to let go. And like I said, that situation right there, it was dealing with me having my kids and not wanting to let go of my kids, and also the whole divorce thing, because people, like I said, I'm committed to, marriage, and I was one of the people that would say, if you get mad, go to the other room, whatever. This is gonna be all the way to the end. Like I never want to get a divorce. I never want to get remarried. None of that stuff. So, that's why it took me so long to get married. Because I didn't want to get married again and do all that stuff. And also, what kept me in it so long is because I never saw it in my family. Everybody was committed into their relationships regardless of the situation. It wasn't until around that time when that happened to me that I started seeing divorces and stuff all in my life or whatever. That kind of like helped me be able to move on too also. So, it was just a burden to just, think about the fact of, getting a divorce when you know that, that's not supposed to be righteous and all that. And it's a form of failure. And, being able to face all that stuff, because that's another reason why you don't want to let go, is because you don't want to face that failure. A lot of people stay in a relationship and pose like everything is all good when it's not, So you'll be posting stuff on Facebook and, think everybody think, oh, they got a happy marriage, when really it's not, it's not a happy marriage. So, like I said, the most important thing that I learned in that situation is, it's okay to, let go. It's okay to put, your trust into God and really accepting things for what it is. You don't have to, cover up like, with Adam and Eve when you know that things is not the way it is, or things are messed up, and now you want to, try to gloss things. And, it's like, that's what I was doing, in my marriage. I was trying to gloss things up like everything was good when it's not. And I had to really accept the fact that, man, I shouldn't got myself in this situation, and we don't supposed to be with each other. I can't change things, because like I said, 2012, I thought that was a thing too. Oh, if I get married, if I marry her, things will change. Like, I actually had somebody tell me that. Do you take her to church? Are you married? All that stuff, So it's like, a lot of times we think that stuff like that will help, but sometimes it's just not meant, And God gave me that story about Abraham and Hagar and Ishmael to basically give me that understanding that, things just not meant, and you have to get a divorce sometimes. That's just part of it. Yeah, God hate divorces, but what caused us to have that divorce is not being with the right person. So, that's the only thing I can think of right now. I try to get on these videos and let the spirit lead me. Some of this stuff I don't have written down or anything, but yeah, man, that's all I can think of is, the power of letting go, and, just also, man, just the power of, hearing that Holy Spirit within you, because like I said, that wasn't my voice. I done spoke about this in other videos, talking about like that voice within that might speak, and it's not you. Like, I knew that voice wasn't me because I didn't. It was an understanding that I did not have, and it was speaking of it. It was speaking with understanding that, like I said, I was like, man, what? Hold up. That ain't true. I had to question it. And when I went and searched it, it was all right. And it really was giving a deep down discernment of my core issue. Like he really was speaking. Like I said, when it brought up that story, it was really speaking on my situation that I really didn't comprehend, because I really thought that I really talked myself into like thinking that I really just love my wife and I just really wanted this marriage, when it's really, I really didn't. You know, true true to the core is like I really didn't want it. I was just sticking to it because I didn't want to fail. And, I had kids and I ain't want them to let go. I ain't want to let them go. And stuff like that just helps build your faith. What God showed me is that it helped build your faith. Because everybody can't do that. Everybody just can't do stuff like that. You really have to be in a situation where you put it in God's hand, because you would get a lot of backlash as a man, especially for sending your wife and kids off just the way Abraham did. And I guarantee you, a lot of people don't read that story and think in that way. Like I said, I never ever ever heard it in that way when it was presented to me through the Spirit. Never even thought about, like I said, Hagar being a wife. Never thought about a divorce. None of that stuff. And like I said, people don't think about the fact that Abraham, this is a godly man, just sent a woman off with a child into the wilderness, man. Like, people don't talk about that, But I always heard divorce is bad. People trying to make you stand into a marriage when it's not good. You know what I mean? They don't, y'all figure it out. But this is in my journey, God was showing me different than what the culture was. And the culture seemed like it was right, but it wasn't right, From what I was seeing now that my eyes is clear, and that made me stick into a situation that was like prolonged for so long, because me and her was talking since 2003, 2002. We got back together back in 2009. That's when we started staying with each other. So from 2009 on to 2014, we was off and on, And she would actually leave. She would come back, and then I'd take her back. Like I said, it wasn't one of those take back like, oh, I just loved her and stuff like that. It was really core to the heart. It was about the kids, And God had to build that strength in me to just go ahead and just accept things for what it is and let it go. Be the man in the relationship, and be firm in what you know is right. And that's what I had to do, because we did cross that bridge again where, she was trying to come back. And, I had to just be like, let's stand firm, man. You know that, man, you are not meant to be with each other, and we just got to let it be what it is, So, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I'm breaking things down for you or whatever, but as always, man, I'm just here trying to share my story. And like I said, divorce is a serious thing. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of men out there that's went through a divorce or going through a divorce, that's probably going through it, you know what I mean? Because I know I did, especially, like I said, especially when you got kids. That's a hard thing as a man to be able to let your kids go and, not be there to protect them and stuff like that in this crazy world, But at the end of the day, if you is that person and you struggling with it, just always remember what God told me, and that was that these are your children on earth, as far as earthly father. But at the end of the day, we both know spiritually that I'm their heavenly father. And whether you do it now or when they 18, there's going to come a point where you're going to have to let them go and put them in my hands. All right? And that's what I had to do. I just had to do it at an early point in my life, or in their point of their life, to where it was like, now all I do is just focus on preparing them for the world, as if they was like 18 years old. It's like that's all they be without me, so I'm constantly just, when I spend my time with them, I prepare them. So and you see, I share videos and stuff like that, of me with my kids. That also build a stronger relationship with them, because of that, because I don't get to be with them as much. So when I do spend time with them, I try to make sure it is, well used, especially, trying to, raise them in a way where, they follow God and they understand who their father is. All right. But I ain't about to go too long, man. We at 21 minutes. So, as always, I love you. And I hope that, this testimony, or this talk of my divorce, help someone out there, whether they going through it right now, or they done went through it and they relating to it, or they know it's about to come, But it'll be all right, man. God gonna be with you. And make sure you check out my other videos if you haven't. And I'm gonna, post more, because the journey keeps going, all right? So this was back in 2014, 2015. And I mean, it's some stuff that I missed out, when it came to just we just gonna, since I ain't put it in a video and the time I should have, we just gonna go ahead and just let it go, I guess. But just because I don't think I'll be able to share it in other videos, but basically what it is, at that time I didn't have a job. I was in school. 2014, I was in school. You remember, I don't know if I shared it in the other videos, but she ended up getting a job where she wanted to, she always wanted to have that job. And we decided to switch roles. She was a stay-at-home mom at that time. So I ended up staying at home, and I ended up pursuing my schooling again so I can graduate. I ended up graduating in 2014, but I didn't have no job at the time. So when she told me, like, I was at ground zero, and God provided. God provided. When I say God provided, man. Like, let me share it. Let me, because this is powerful. It's powerful, man. So, Monday or Sunday, she told me. That Monday, I said, all right, I got to put in applications to get me a job, because I ain't got no money. I don't got no car. I don't got nothing, because I had ended up getting in a wreck. I took the money and bought a van for my wife. So that was going to be hers. And I didn't have none. So it was like, man, what I'm going to do about a car? How I'm going to get to work? I need a job to start making money and all that. So Monday, I Like I said, I just moved. God told me to move and do it. Monday, I put in an application. Not an application. I went on Career Builder. I put my resume on there. That Wednesday, somebody reached out to me. They was like, "Hey, I seen you had experience in construction, and I want to know if you want to come out here and work at this mill." And just to make a long story short, I end up working out there. I got me a rental car. I worked that week, paid for the rental car for that week, end up getting the car. And man, to this day, I'm at this job. It's been over 10 years, or 10 years now. But because it was 2015 when all that stuff happened. But yeah, man, like I said, God made a way. You know, I hate to breeze through that because that this story right here is not nothing to breeze through. Like I said, I've been there for 10 years now. But God will make a way at the end of the day. I ain't want to take away from the whole letting go story. That's the reason why I ain't want to go too deep into it because, like I said, the whole point of this video is about letting go. But I just feel like I need to share that because, it's other things that you have to deal with. Also, like I said, I didn't have no job or anything. So that could be another one of those things that make you feel like, dang, I don't need to get no divorce. Because I also hear that too, where a man was sticking to a relationship because they be like, man, well, what I'm going to do about this or what I'm going to do about that because she this and she, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's not of faith, man. You got to put it in God's hand. And like I said, I didn't have no car. I ain't had no job. I've been out of a job for 2 years. 2 years. And just like that, I end up getting a job that same week for a pay that I was making when I left working. So it was like, God started me back at square one. And then things just, I ain't had no car. I said, get a rental car. Got a rental car. All that stuff just worked out, man. It all worked out. And now I'm straight, man. I got my own house, all that, So it's like, yeah, man. Not like I said, not to go too far ahead, but it's okay, Put God first and everything be all right. All right? Love you, and I'm gone. I'm about to end this video before I think of something else.